Every story begins with a single touch, Mali. A page that remembers.
Cleopatra's reign is actually closer to the 21st century than it is to the age of the pyramids.
That's how ancient Egypt really is. A civilization so old, so large.
And if we follow that chronology, our story of fascination with this North African culture begins in antiquity itself.
First Julius Caesar, then Mark Antony fell under Egypt's spell, or more precisely, under Cleopatra.
After Rome annexed Egypt in 30 BCE, the empire imported its symbols wholesale.
Obelisks were shipped across the Mediterranean and planted in Roman squares. Coins depicted sphinxes.
Rome was not just ruling Egypt, it was displaying Egypt, announcing its control through appropriation.
Religion absorbed the Nile's influence as well. Serapis was a new hybrid deity, Osiris fused with Apis.
The Nile became personified as the god Nilus. Horus was depicted as a falcon-headed soldier in Roman armor.
And Alexander the Great famously declared himself the divine son of Ammon after visiting the oracle at Siwa.
But the real superstar was Isis. Her cult traveled far beyond Egypt.
Spreading across the Mediterranean, from the Greek island of Delos all the way to modern-day Germany.
Egypt was simultaneously exotic, spiritual, and fashionable, a land to be conquered, yet also...
And thus, another page of time returns to silence.
When the Renaissance period arrived, Egypt resurfaced in European imagination, but through the ruins of Rome.
Most Europeans of the 15th and 16th centuries had never set foot in Egypt. What they knew came second-hand.
Ironically, what they thought was authentic Egypt was already a Roman reinterpretation.
Popes re-erected obelisks, recasting them as Christian symbols of papal supremacy,
Just as Roman emperors had used them to flaunt imperial power. Hieroglyphs, still undeciphered, were treated as mysterious codes, guarding secret wisdom.
Scholars invented neo-hieroglyphs, fake alphabets, actually used to express European philosophical concepts.
This fed into Europe's growing fascination with esotericism. Alchemists and occultists believed Egypt concealed the deepest truths.
The Hermetic tradition was thought to be Egyptian in origin.
Egypt became less a real place, and more an imagined library of mystical secrets waiting to be unlocked. During the Enlightenment, Egypt's image shifted again. It became revered as the cradle of law, science, and order.
Philosophers praised Egypt as a fountain of civilization.
Travelers on the Grand Tour could marvel at Egypt second-hand without ever leaving European soil.
Rome's obelisks, libraries full of travelers' tales, allowed the elites to experience the Nile Valley without the hazards of the journey.
Egypt had become an idea as much as a place. And thus, another page of time returns to silence.
The obsession exploded in 1798, when Napoleon Bonaparte launched his campaign in Egypt.
This was more than a military venture. France saw itself as heir to Rome, and Egypt was ripe for claiming.
Militarily, Napoleon's forces were routed, but culturally, they changed Europe forever. Alongside his army, Napoleon brought more than 100 scholars, engineers, and artists.
Their monumental survey, temples, plants, animals, monuments, all meticulously documented.
When published, it caused a sensation across Europe. Suddenly, Egypt wasn't just a myth.
It was mapped, catalogued, and illustrated in stunning detail.
And then came the Rosetta Stone, discovered by French soldiers in 1799. A fragment of granodiorite inscribed with a decree written in 3 different scripts.
It was seized by the British after Napoleon's defeat, but proved priceless.
In 1822, Jean-François Champollion finally cracked the code. This moment marked
What began as Napoleon's failed military adventure had reshaped Europe's imagination. But Egyptomania wasn't just academic, it was political. Britain and France competed fiercely for influence.
By 1882, Britain had established the so-called Veiled Protectorate.
What had begun as a spectacle had now evolved into both a scientific discipline and a colonial project.
And thus, another page of time returns to silence.
For centuries, only kings, emperors, and the wealthy could journey to Egypt.
Gentlemen archaeologists scoured the ruins with enthusiasm but little training.
In the 19th century, tourism industrialized. The British entrepreneur Thomas Cook pioneered package holidays.
By the 1880s, Cook steamships virtually monopolized tourist traffic on the Nile.
What had once been the preserve of pharaohs was now packaged into an adventure for curious Europeans with disposable income.
As tourism boomed, Egypt also became a commodity. World fairs featured elaborate Egyptian courts.
Cemeteries across Europe borrowed pharaonic motifs. City squares sprouted obelisks.
Museums in Paris and London raced to stockpile the most impressive collections of antiquities.
But this fascination came at a cost. Egypt's heritage was plundered on a massive scale. Tomb raiding skyrocketed. Perhaps the strangest and most unsettling expression was the mummy unwrapping party. Earlier centuries had already consumed mummies as medicine,
Or ground them into a pigment called mummy brown.
But in the Victorian age, the fascination became performance. Imagine it, a crowded lecture hall.
At the center of the stage lies a genuine Egyptian mummy. A surgeon steps forward with scissors and scalpels.
and as each layer of linen is peeled away, the audience leans in. Gasps erupt at the sight of amulets.
Or the leathery remains of flesh that hadn't seen daylight in thousands of years.
Sometimes these spectacles were presented as serious lectures, other times as fashionable parlor entertainment.
The trend spread across Europe, always blurring the lines between scholarship and showmanship. For some Victorians, these events felt like thrilling glimpses. For others, they were nothing short of a macabre diversion.
The more Egypt was consumed as entertainment, the easier it became to treat the past not as heritage, but as a commodity.
Out of this frenzy grew the Gothic myth of the mummy's curse, a story that distracted from the real horror of colonial looting.
And thus, another page of time returns to silence.
The single greatest spark of Egyptomania came on November 4th, 1922.
Funded by Lord Carnarvon, Howard Carter peered through a hole into a sealed tomb.
And whispered that he saw wonderful things.
He had found the resting place of Tutankhamun, nearly intact, glittering with treasures.
In 1923, Lord Carnarvon's sudden death sparked rumors of a mummy's curse. In 1924, Carter finally reached the sarcophagus, revealing the boy king to the modern world. The Times had secured exclusive rights, and Harry Burton's meticulously staged photographs transformed the discovery into a global media spectacle.
After the horrors of World War I, people craved escapism. Tutankhamun provided it.
Fashion embraced Egyptian motifs. Fashionable ladies wore flapper dresses that echoed papyrus reliefs.
Bobbed hairstyles mirrored ancient queens, and Art Deco borrowed heavily from pharaonic design. Egyptomania swept Europe and America alike.
Yet within Egypt, Tutankhamun symbolized something deeper. The 1920s were a period of rising nationalism.
Schools began teaching pharaonic history. Egyptian Egyptologists took leadership roles.
Museums once run by Europeans came under Egyptian control.
Tut was reclaimed as a national icon, a bridge between ancient pride and modern identity.
Egyptomania reveals less about ancient Egypt than about the societies that fixated on it. For Rome, it was a mirror of imperial power. For Renaissance thinkers, it was a stage for mystery and wisdom. For Victorians, it became both a spectacle and a commodity.
And in the 20th century, Tutankhamun turned it into a global media phenomenon.
But the story doesn't end with appropriation. Tutan's tomb allowed Egypt to reclaim its past.
And in some ways, Egyptomania never ended. From Hollywood epics
into the continued global demand for Egyptian exhibitions, the fascination persists.
Ancient Egypt still functions as a mirror for modern desires. Whether for glamour, mystery, or power,
Its legacy remains unmistakable, enduring, and ultimately, its own.
And thus, another page of time returns to silence.